So we're just gonna get things kicked off. Um, Seems like there are a lot of, well, different answers in terms of the challenges around clarity, communication, speed and influence, sharing assets. If you have more to share, we're going to leave the poll up. So while people are joining in, you can still feel free to share the challenges that you have with clients when you're collaborating with them in terms of product development. And this is again what the topic is really all about today. Some really familiar words there in chat. And that's a perfect setup for today's session. I'm Jessica. Very happy to host you for our Reframe sessions, which is our weekly series for consultants and agencies rethinking what great client work looks like today. We're actually 4 sessions in now. I'm really happy to see that some people have been with us from the very beginning. And just to recap, some of the things we've learned so far. For the first session, Jerome opened it up by sharing how he actually turned his AI anxiety into creative fuel. Adam from Collab shared how workshop isn't really the product, it's and how consultancies are moving more towards designing for systems and moments now rather than just selling workshops himself. And then last week with Colin, it was a very fun and free-flowing discussion around what happens when innovation works, to innovation work when AI can generate ideas on demand. So hopefully the sessions that we have had before sparked some ideas for you. And today we're going something really practical and hopefully very timely for a lot of you here. Because even if you're thinking, you've updated your thinking around AI and innovation or in capability transfer, the reality is a lot of client delivery work really follows the same old pattern. So we have discovery, we need to go into spec stage, and then we have a big reveal at the end where clients get to sign off on the output. So Alicia from Miyagami, who is so kindly joining us today, what she's gonna do is make the case for where that model is starting to break and actually show us what a better rhythm would look like. So she comes up, she's the design strategy lead for Miyagami, which is a product agency based in Amsterdam. And they also have a team in Vietnam. And they do this work day in and out. They work across strategy, design, and engineering. And her background comes from academe, but moved over to product and service design. So she has a lot of interesting practical and even theoretical frame to share with us today around how work gets built and how you actually structure around the challenges that clients are having. And hopefully that lens is going to be super useful for you today. So, Alicia, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Wow, that's an amazing intro. Yeah, I don't think I have much else to explain about my background or even Miyagami, but I do have a little slide for that, so we'll go through it. Oh, wait. There we go. Yeah, so welcome everybody. I'm really excited. I'm super happy that Miro invited me to host this webinar, and the topic is really close to my heart because this is our day today. And yeah, like Jessica already said, I have a bit of a mixed background, so that means that I'm a little bit I'm a little bit too passionate about processes and how to improve them and collaboration and things like that. So yeah, let's see what I can share with you guys today. So I am coming from Miyagami. Like Jessica also already mentioned, we are a digital product agency based in Amsterdam and Vietnam. And yeah, we do strategy, like product strategy, digital strategy, and design, and engineering. So development. What I wanted to explain first of all is what kind of projects we do. So we do what we call client projects. What that means, like, we are really not functioning like a product company. So a client comes with an idea, either more or less thought out, and then we have to help them develop the first increment or iteration of that. And sometimes that end up in a really long relationship where we've seen the product become mature and be used by thousands of users, and sometimes just a one-off exchange. So yeah. But that also means that we are a small cross-functional team and that we get to collaborate across all the phases of product development, and we get to move faster. We get to test out things reflect about our own process a lot easier maybe than other bigger companies like product companies. So all that said, as an agency, of course, where we are doing all these different client projects, sometimes it's in and out. That means that we are very exposed to clients, and we are very exposed to potential challenges of working with clients. Or when I say clients, you can insert stakeholders, other bigger departments in your organization, because it ends up being a really similar relationship, right? So what were our challenges that we were experiencing? Well, first of all, we started, big mistake, but we started with fixed scope projects. We were providing fixed scope projects for a really long time, and it would be very difficult to manage, on the one hand, expectations really early on. On the other hand, product is an alive thing, right? It's living, and it's a practice where you figure out the best way to produce the product as you are investing your time in it. So a fixed scope already makes all that very complicated. We were also working somewhat in a waterfall mode. This is because we inherited a very software first culture as a team, and also because the client wanted certainty, and they wanted to know how much something would cost upfront, how long it would take. You can see a theme here with the fixed scope, the waterfall structure, etc. But this also meant that we were not able to offer much flexibility in terms of the requirements, and we were going crazy trying to define them upfront. Another issue we had is, like, in this very structured, very traditional, handoff oriented type of setup, the design and the development team were silos, and there was this big handoff in the middle where everything had to turn out perfect, otherwise the relay would not happen correctly, right? So as part of this type of structure, what ended up happening is that the clients would see progress way too late. There was these really long stretches where the client would not know what's going on with their project, right? And we would not be able to show a lot because you're working on waterfall and all these other complexities. So we wanted to change all these, and of course we were aware we needed to start working with Agile. That seemed to be something that, on the one hand, was the thing to do, but on the other hand, a lot of people were already skeptic about some of the problem it has. So for us, it did solve some problems. We started to implement it in whichever way we could, and at the same time, it created new ones. And I'm sure some of you can relate. So on the one hand, our clients still want the predictability about the scope and especially about the cost. This was the reality in an agency. They wanted to know, they wanted to know upfront when it would be ready, or that it would be ready by that deadline, and that it would cost the budget they had. And also for us internally, and even with the client, it was creating too much overhead, both in communication and process. Ultimately, we were running shorter projects, so we realized it was really good for product teams, but for us, we needed some more traditional structure put in place. And this was feeling a little bit awkward to adopt, pretending that we were a product company. So our conclusion was like, okay, we definitely need something from the tenants and the philosophy of Agile. It's helping in some ways, but there is still not a full click for us. And especially, we don't feel it has improved these core problems we had fully. So we needed something in between, right? So that was a question. Like, okay, how do we do this? And now we knew what were our problems. So I think that's what's really nice of being an agency and a small team, that we were constantly doing retrospectives after every project, and we're mapping out this data that you can even find patterns around, right? So after X amount of projects, you can see, well, we have the same recurrent issues, right? On the one hand, we have the issue of too late visibility for the client, therefore too late feedback, therefore misalignment. If we don't get to be able to visualize progress and share the decisions that are being made with the client, first of all, it doesn't feel like they are their decisions, and secondly, we cannot gather their feedback, which is really valuable because in many cases our client is our expert number one on the topic. So yeah, there were misalignments across many projects. Then we also saw scope creep, of course. These were the fixed scope type of projects where the scope just grew and grew and grew. And especially designers, I am a designer, so I can say this, we are fantastically great at growing the scope without wanting. And even if we tried, to bring in the developers along the design process to always check with them so we didn't bloat certain features or functionality, sometimes then it was the client, right? So these shape-shifting requirements were really hurting us. And then we also saw across projects, there was some project knowledge loss because there were a lot of fluidity among the teams. And very importantly, the clients didn't seem to click that well with this concept of the MVP within Agile, with the increments that were not per se scalable, with having to deliver something that they would test and then go back into zero and build from scratch, right? So we will pitch this concept because for a while we believed in it, and clients would be pretty upfront about, I need something, that I feel I can build upon. And that it's not, we don't have the budgets of like a product company, let's say. So when we, after all these retros and finding these patterns, we looked out and we realized, well, this is starting to feel like we're looking at it as a problem of the process, but we're starting to see that it's more of a problem of the collaboration structure or the lack of a collaboration structure, right? So we flipped the question, and this was kind of like our moment of clarity. So we flipped the question from how can we manage the projects better to avoid all these challenges that we were having with clients, to how can we collaborate with our clients and with each other better, right? So our guiding light was like, okay, let's create a more collaborative environment across our projects. So that led us to what I want to share with you today, that is revamping our product building process and how we tackle that and what it has resulted into. So we knew we needed, more than anything, we really wanted more client involvement. And very importantly, that the client, because they were involved from the beginning, because they were sharing their mind, they were giving feedback on the spot, they were building a feeling of ownership over the process, over the product from day one. So this shared ownership, because sometimes, to be honest, it felt like we were the owners of the product and then we have to convince the client that this was the best way when it was their product, right? So building that shared ownership was really important, and we had to figure out how to do that from the beginning. Then we had the need for, well, I kind of already said it because it all goes together, but continuous feedback, continuous moments of gathering feedback, showing progress, and checking in with the direction we were taking. And also scope flexibility. Part of feedback, part of opening up yourself to receive client feedback from the beginning means that you have to offer some flexibility in what is it that we are building. Because as a team, we might figure that out. And with the client, we might figure that out as we are progressing, right? We also knew we needed small and accountable product teams, especially as an agency. We wanted to build the trust with the client. We knew that to collaborate across each other and with the client, it was really important, the human aspect. And it was really important that there was accountability, and that ended up building trust among that team, and that would take, the trust element would take us from beginning to end in a successful way. And then lastly, very important for our business, we needed to build products or to offer products that were built in viable increments. So I will go into detail of what I mean more about that later. Okay, so introducing the 12-week product building and collaboration cycle. So instead of, let me backtrack for a second. So we were here, right? We knew what we needed, and then we actually did a series of internal creative sessions with the team. We mapped out the perfect process. We compromised, the discovery team wanted certain things that the sales team couldn't offer, or like the other way around. And then the same with the involvement of development and design. So we all together sat down and mapped out, okay, this is the perfect process for us to offer collaboration, or like to build this collaboration space with each other, with the client, etc., and to fulfill these tenants that we know we need. And when we looked at it, of course, it was pretty simple, because we were just saying, okay, instead of selling projects and selling waterfall projects with a fixed scope, with a promise of what we are delivering, with very few moments of interaction with the client, because requirements are set in stone up front and we are scared of showing something because the client will open up requirements. Instead of all that, we just have to start selling time engagements, cycles of product. So instead of close cut projects, 12-week product cycles. So each cycle will produce what we started to call a minimum scalable product. Of course, on the one hand, from a marketing point of view, we had a name to call this thing, but also we really wanted to separate ourselves from the MVP concept that seemed to scare some of the type of clients that we're working with and stakeholders. So why minimum scalable product? Well, it's trying to convey already that certainty on the name, right? That it will be something, the minimum thing we can build, or the maximum thing we can build in 12 weeks, but it will be scalable. It will be viable, feasible, and usable, and our clients will be ready to go to market with it. So now let me take you to, let's see if I can do this well. Let me take you to the visual, and I'll show you in detail what is this 12-week pro building and collaboration cycle. Let's see. Yeah, of course. I have to stop here so that I can see it fully. Yeah, there we go. Okay. You guys see it? Okay, perfect. Great. So I want to take you through this. It's really not rocket science, but that's the beauty of this, right? So our PDLC became this setup, and a couple of things I want to highlight, and then I'll go in more detail. So why 12 weeks? Well, 12 weeks was just a natural, real life timeline that seemed approachable for everybody and understandable, but long enough that we could deliver some value. So it's a quarter, you're going to have 3 months or so. And in development, as many probably know, there's a limit to what we can do in a really short time. So yeah, this is as tight as we managed to get it. And then what we are showing here is a hybrid model. That's how we call it. So we have the structure and you could say, certainty of the 3 phases of waterfall product development. We start with discovery, call it, scoping, research, gathering requirement, problem setting, user empathizing, however you want to call it. But we start with a discovery phase where we are defining what is the aim to build. And then we go into UX UI design and ultimately into development. So this is very straightforward. Now, the agile element of the hybrid model, it's integrating how we distribute time and how we communicate time and progress with the client. And this is not a major shift, but it does change a lot already the relationship you build, and especially the understanding that the client builds of the process. So all the time we're communicating that we're working in sprints. Even in the discovery, we say it's a discovery sprint or 2 or 3. We tell the client for this type of project, we need 2.5, or we try to make it 2 or 3, but we need 3. And the same with design. We talk about design sprints, and of course within development is the same. Now, of course, like you see, it's still waterfall because we are packing all the design phase together and then handing over to development. But you could think of the cycle as a mega sprint increment of its own, right? So at the end of that cycle, we will go back into the drawing board and the roadmap that we've mapped out and design another set of increments and build like that. Now, the other thing I wanted to highlight here is like we build into the process a lot of collaboration spaces, we call it, but it's just sessions with the team, with the client. The team, in this case, it's what we've named the product triad, but it's just simply a PM. In this case, it's a product manager, a designer, and a developer or engineering lead.
Quick,
This, sorry.
quick question, Alicia. Kate was asking, is each sprint 1 week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. I probably made the visual wrong. Yeah, I am sorry, guys. So just, yeah, so you see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so the visual is wrong, but just you could understand it as like this, right? I will fix it when we share this back. But yeah, one sprint is 2 weeks indeed. This is especially important when you're in development because in 1 week it's difficult to do anything. But yeah. Thank you for the note. So let me go back to where I was. Yeah, so product triad, hybrid model, a waterfall sequence with the sprint system, and then a lot of different moments of collaboration built into it. We're gonna go in detail through this, but I just wanted to give a visual overview how does this work in sequence. So in the discovery, we start with a discovery session. I also have here the little tags of like these type of collaboration moments need also a collaboration space. And that's also really important. For us, it's the Miro boards. It can be anything if you're in person. Oftentimes for us, it's just a white poster on the room and post-its. But it's really important to creating collaboration that you have a couple of ingredients, and one of them, of course, is the space, and that also includes the actual physical online space where your client feels comfortable or is made comfortable to play around, share their mind, contribute with you. So that's what we do on things like the discovery session, but also the product roadmap session. It's a very beautiful moment of building trust with the client because you're advising them on their priorities, and they are also sharpening up what they want in front of you. So these are instrumentals for us to build on top of that trust and that ownership that we are building later in the phases of design, etc. So
we also have a couple of questions in chat
yeah,
relating to this process. So
yeah.
first one was from Sudhir asking about like basically saying that the biggest problem with Waterfall was to handle change requests. Also, especially when it comes to later stages. How exactly do you handle those in this type of process?
Yeah, so let's see how I can explain that well. So we've been defining with the client across discovery what are we gonna build. We basically make it really clear in this product roadmap session. This is the scope of what we're building now. We estimate roughly at this point, this is what can be built now, but we cannot promise anything until the design is finished. The development team will not do a final estimation and confirm that can be built in those sprints until then. So the client has a couple of instances of confirming that this is indeed what they want to build, and we have also a couple of instances to align with the scope. So there are certain flexibility built into the development phase of doing changes. So we demo, we confirm with the client, this is still what you want, we review the backlog, is this still a priority? Yes, no.
Yeah.
So that's where the maybe agile element comes in of how we deal with the changes that ideally they are not these really big changes that we used to have on waterfall mode. They're just more detail oriented because we've inherited all the big changes or they've been done across these earlier stages.
Okay,
I'm
so
not sure.
really making sure that they're sort of involved throughout the process and like even the step changes that can be a big problem during development or something you check in with them on a much more regular basis. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay with two more questions before we okay.
Yeah, let's
Emily was
go.
also asking, knowing sprints are time boxed, where are there challenges for moving from projects into more time box process oriented sprints? I hope I got that right, Emily.
That's a great question. What are the challenges?
A lot. Let's start with the thorniest ones for you.
Yeah. I think I don't know if you guys can relate, but first of all, you have to explain the value of this to the client, right? They have to believe in this way of working. So they have to believe that they're gonna get what they need for the business out of this process, and they have to believe in this setup. So we really have to pitch really clearly and really well that this is the best for them. And secondly, um, I guess from a really like commercial point of view, it means also that you finish this 12-week increment with a client and they might go into the world because they have a functioning thing they can put live, they can go on rounds of investment, they can test, they can everything. So they go away and then they come back months after and then we do another cycle of that months after. Sometimes in the perfect scenario, this is happening a lot more frequent, but otherwise that can also be challenging from a, again, very operational commercial point of view. And then there's a lot of the daily challenges that I might be forgetting. But yeah.
Hope I've
Um,
answered it, Emily. Oh, yeah, that's a great reaction. Thank you. Okay, hi, Hyla, are you okay with me reading your question, or would you rather share it out loud?
I like how you do it.
Oh, okay, lovely. Okay, two questions. Does this allow for creating more than one concept and or solution based on discovery session? And how does this factor in with the client's tech realities during discovery?
yeah, I think I have it here. Does this allow for creating more than one concept? No, so we focus on one product. In our case, we are not creating, very rarely we are creating one feature at a time, right? So this is a full product or like an increment. I call it an increment because it can be a small product. So we oftentimes through the discovery, we map out a way bigger product than we can tackle. And it's all about those phases of the concept proposal to the product roadmap session to the final diagram. I will explain that later a little bit better. But to the final presentation we do during discovery, where we define, okay, this is what we can fit on this cycle. So yeah, what we end up with at the end of discovery is a bucket of ideas for future big features or side platforms of this same ecosystem. So we can even end up with a multi-cycle proposal and the client already being interested in that. How to factor in clients' tech realities in discovery phase. So we have in the discovery phase the engineering lead very closely involved, and any of these tech realities, I guess you mean like their stack, and if we have to plug and play our what we are gonna build to their situation, that's part of what we do in the discovery. So there's a really big part of researching all the dependencies, limitations, the technology that we're going to need to use here, the stack, all that is also done part of the discovery because the designer is running almost like one track of research and the engineer is running another parallel one, and they are all the time aligning to see that we are understanding what we're going to build and what are going to be the limitations technically. I hope that replied the really good questions.
One last one, and then we can from Jason. Do you orientate the face or capability into a set of related features during discovery and design? It's a bit of a quick yes and no. I think this relates a bit more to the scope of the project. Was that what you were referring to, Jason?
Yeah, I think you've already answered that question. We talked about a concept isn't just one piece, it's a related set of concepts together.
Yeah.
Lovely. So that rounds it up. Thank you everyone for the questions. Keep them popping in and I promise we will make time for it later, towards the end. Thanks, Alicia.
Yes. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I'll just wrap up in here and go back to the slides. But like I was mentioning, it's all about building these spaces where we are interacting with the client directly, ideally on the same room, but we do a lot of things remote, even with people that live in the same city where we are based. Nowadays, remote is really important. And also continuing that internally. So all these purple post-its that you see are all internal alignments of the tech team, the engineering team, and the design team, figuring out what we are building, if we are still within the scope, if we have understood every functionality well, because this is a pretty high-paced situation, like you see. Then we still have things like the handoff, but they lose a lot of importance when you've been aligned from the beginning so much. There's a lot less pressure on this phase. And with the client, we have presentations across the design and development phases, like the progress meeting and the design demo, and also the sprint demos. At the beginning, when we are setting up architecture and like infrastructure and stuff, we might not be able to demo something, and that's okay. We just explain it really clearly. But as soon as we can demo a part of what's developed, we do that. And then last but not least, the production. This means that the production space, I will talk about that later, but that's where we see that we are able to optimize things and integrate tools to make more automatic the translation of raw data into very early on visual stuff that we can bring to that collaboration space, right? Okay. So, oh yeah, I have to go back to the canvas. So let me take you through this set of slides I have here. And I just want to make sure that I share all the tenants with you, all the important stuff. But I will try to go quickly through it because I'm loving the questions that you are also proposing. Okay, so the 3 principles of these for us are to focus on an MSP as a deliverable over an MVP. So meaning that we take a scope that, or like a time bucket that is big enough that we can make progress past just one functionality or a set of functionalities. Ideally, it's a product that is feasible, that is viable for the client, and that can be used, and is also built in a way that is considering scaling. That's something we also do in the discovery. That's why we map out a way bigger product than the one that we end up building, because we want to know what things have to be taken into account in the tech setup from the beginning. And when the client wants to go really far, we want to know so that we can try to build from the ground up something that doesn't have to be rebuilt, especially in terms of the architecture and the infrastructure, etc. Then we have the hybrid delivery model. Is this really a hybrid delivery model? Is this really waterfall? Is this really, I don't know, an abomination of agile? We don't know. We don't really care. It's working so far. We've struggled so much with these type of things as an agency. Again, it's not like a pro company reality. So it's working so far. The client seems to really love this cadence. It's very clear for them. There's a certainty built in, and also there's a certainty somehow built in into distributing time in sprints, and for them seeing progress every 2 weeks. We try to, every 2 weeks, every sprint, have a meeting, either a design progress or like a development demo. And last but not least, the product triad. So having this 3 expert team where we try to reduce the amount of people that can work on a project or that lead the project as much as possible. We might have a secondary designer supporting, we might have many other engineers definitely working, but there's an engineering lead, there's a design lead, and a PM that have full knowledge of the project. They are not just a manager overseeing something. They are there in the decision making with the client, they are building the relationship with the client, and they own the single source of truth. That's really important. Okay, and then to go quickly through it, because I tend to go too much in detail, but these are the ingredients of the 12-week cycle. So these are all the things you need to kind of put it together. On the one hand, we have the structure that I have already explained. Just important here, we have the consecutive phases, the engagement measured in the sprints, and there's not really hard handoffs, but instead there's overlaps. That's why here I have discovery week 1 to 3, for example, then design week 3 to 6. That third week might be where the lines are blurring because the team is transitioning from discovery to design. And depending on the project, we might need one more week of discovery, or depending on how the discovery is progressing, or we might want to save as much time into the design because we anticipate certain complexities or certain flows that we have not figured out and need further research. It could be that we allocate that time into the design. Same with development. There's ideally, of course, a clean handoff that the development team needs to get started, and also especially a confirmation from the client that this is the design they want. But that doesn't mean that the team is in silos. The team are communicating a lot that those first weeks, and then they come back to see each other as the progress of one of them goes ahead. From the side of the client, we also have a lot of presentations and demos, and we have backlogs. Why I highlight the backlog? Well, because it gives the client the possibility of choosing. So that's the flexibility built into what are we going to build, even though, again, they've confirmed a design, but it's not binding. So the roles, I think I've explained them. We have the product manager. They take care of client communication, the process, and they participate from discovery onwards really closely. And then in our case, because it's a small team, the discovery is also very much run by the designer. So these designers have to be comfortable to, on the one hand, advise the client on product strategy and define the value proposition all the way into the information architecture and the user flows. And our leading engineer, the same way, has to be able to do consultancy on a pretty deep level on backend and like infrastructure stuff, but at the same time, advise on how long would take certain component or feature to build from a front-end point of view. Why the product triad? Well, like I mentioned already, this is the smallest possible unit of expertise we could think of, but it's all about just creating a group of people that are sharing the ownership and they are steering the project, and they are building that relationship with the client. Collaborating across changing phases, it's really difficult. And then we have the meetings and the client participation. So I already touched on some of these, but it's really important for us, the 3 core meetings of the discovery workshop or discovery session, where is the first full long session with the client. We can run 2 to 4 hours, depending on the case. And then we have the product roadmap session, where the idea of what we are building and what's important to build now versus what's the ambition of the client next and later becomes really clear. So by this session, we've tried to set up all the functionalities and feature type of tickets. I'll show you that in a moment. And we advise from a design and from a technical point of view to the client what should be on that product in that increment, in that MSP first, and what could wait for later. So it's also a moment where they first recognize or start seeing in practice our expertise, which also builds trust, which also helps collaboration, right? And then during design and development, like I mentioned, it's all about having as many small demos and progress meetings as you can. We have a lot of experience in avoiding spooking our clients, so making them scared when they see something that is not there yet, that you cannot share yet. But I have to say, now with the type of tools that we have with AI prototyping tools and etc., it's easier and easier to not have to share like a really bad wireframe or mid-fidelity situation that they're going to freak out about. We have the backlog alignment. I already talked about that. And then I want to take a moment, because if there's one thing I want to say today about, again, like the theory of collaboration and the way we now understand it, is this one. So in terms of deliverables and tools, we have, we could say, a mindset, and that is that we need visual artifacts. So when I was in academia, we used to talk all the time about this concept of the boundary object, because the designer is often a translator of different languages. So we have the business objectives and what the client wants. We also have what the user wants and needs, but we also have the engineering needs of a product and the language that the developer would speak, and the designer tends to sit in the middle. So that means that we are a little bit more used to creating this type of boundary objects. So things that you put in the middle of a situation when you have collaboration across different expertise that talk different quote unquote languages or technical languages, but that helps them all understand what is it that we are talking about, what is it that we are building. So these are just visual. Think about any type of visual element. I share here like a diagram, but a visual element that anybody from different backgrounds could understand, right? I know not everybody maybe can understand a technical diagram, but we are thinking about a diagram that maybe it's spoken in a little bit more everyday language. So yeah, we try to create as many of these visual artifacts to present to the client for them to own also as a deliverable, and for our internal and client team to align around. So we see that collaboration improves drastically when everybody's looking at the same thing and they can align around what we are building. And every deliverable and tool that we select is with that in mind. So that's it. The key deliverables from our end are the MSP diagram. That is this kind of diagram that I should, let's see. There we go. So this is from an actual project, and it's pretty straightforward workflow type of sequence platform for analysis and self-reflection, but it helped a lot to communicate with the client and for the client themselves to understand what they wanted to build, and for the developer and the designer to understand what had to be designed and built, to just do a diagram like this. And we don't really stick to format. Like, we adapt the diagram in a way to whatever that product needs and whatever that client needs. If in this case it was very phase oriented, we did it like that. But if it's very heavy in architecture, it might look like an information architecture with content mapping per phase. If the user flows are the key way to understand the platform, we might do a heavier diagram that way. So I'm sure this is not theoretically, we are practical in what we do. Okay. Let me see if I find where I was. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So that's one of the early deliverables that the client sees. Of course, they also receive like the product roadmap board. It's theirs. It has to feel that it's theirs, their plan of their product now and in the future. There we build ownership, but also this diagram is telling them what we are all understanding that we're building. And then this has been integrated lately. We didn't used to do it, of course, but we now produce, we prompt an AI prototype pretty early on in the discovery, and we try to deliver a discovery prototype. It depends a lot on the platform, like I said with the diagram, but the last few projects, it was really helpful to already show a prototype during discovery, even though it makes me really nervous as a designer. Again, it's just a visual thing that everybody understands and everybody can tell us that is not how I envision it, or I am user number one. This is not yet what it has to be, and it's shared with the premise that this is not the final product. We still have to go through the design process. We still have to figure out and nuance each user flow and do the actual thinking. This is a prompt, right? But it's a visual thing that the client can communicate around with us, and that also designer and developer can start understanding what are we building. Then we have a design prototype that's all properly built, and then we have the live final MSP. So I have to check the time. I want to share something and then maybe shut up for the final Q&A. But yeah, let me go through a few slides, and then I'll show you guys also what we are doing in the discovery to go from raw data and insights into these visual artifacts that I just talked about. So yeah, of course we use the traditional product building tools that you can think of. I just wanted to make a mention to Miro because it is a great collaboration tool. Again, because of this premise and this mindset of like, it allows everybody has visual thinking skills, and it allows everybody to map visually what they're thinking about. So we all have a space and we all have a visual artifact around which to communicate and align and ultimately collaborate. So we are trying to integrate it as much as possible through the discovery phase. Of course, it's really helpful, and like you saw already, we have a lot of different canvas and boards that we use. But yeah, maybe as the tool grows and also AI continues integrating in things like prototyping, we use it more and more through other phases. And now just because I am the first one that is a little bit conscious about the feeling of, is AI actually good for collaboration, or is integrating things like AI good for collaboration? Just wanted to mention that the way I see it is that if we can explore these ideas faster, like the AI the prototype that I just talked about, we can build in more iterations. What I would try very strongly to avoid is that we then cheapen the process, that we then cheapen or shorten the amount of iterations needed. Then we are just building, I think, worse products. But if we use it in a way that it allows us to visualize progress earlier, for everybody to see what are we building and to build that shared understanding, I think it can be a benefit, not a detraction to collaboration. Yeah, so I'm gonna take you through a last thing. Let's see, that I prepared for today. And this is all within the Miro space. We've been using the latest AI Miro tools, and I have a little setup here so you can see what we can do nowadays. Yeah, okay, there we go. So imagine if we start from a pretty basic discovery session type of setup with the notes that we gathered during the meeting. These are a little bit cleaned up, I have to be honest. Of course, we will have even rougher notes, but yeah, this is something that the designer can do after the discovery session, right? Clean them up a little bit and then get an overview of what is it that the client wants to build. Well, now with Miro, we can do things that do make our life way easier, because we used to struggle a lot in this discovery, especially in the discovery phase, to produce the documentation that we needed to communicate with the client and also internally. So now we can just prompt it with an AI flow, and we can generate, what you see here is like from the discovery notes, we've generated a product brief, and also we've generated PRD. This is not our final PRD whatsoever, but it's a first PRD. And we're all about iterating this documentation. And then from that, we also can generate with another AI flow in Miro itself, user stories, and we can generate a first table of features and functionalities, like a PRD type of table, that then makes it really easy to prepare for the product roadmap session. Oh, this is not showing well. Well, you're gonna have to believe me that these are basically the functionalities that we have here, but made into cards that then we just use with the client during the session. So these are all the tickets, and then they would tell us, okay, this one is a really important functionality for me because, for example, I've promised it to a potential investor or whatever, or because it's the core value proposition of my product. So that goes into now, and then we just move things around here. And another thing that I wanted to show about these visual artifacts and using AI pro collaboration instead of against it is this is a prototype that we built really quickly with Miro from all that information. So in reality, it's just from the first discovery session, right? We already can generate all this stuff. But as we are coming back to these things in the different sessions in collaboration with the client, we refine the information, the data, and then it will give us a more real final example. And then in the concept proposal, so when we are in that discovery phase, try to understand what we are building, we might use a prototype like this as support. We are very clear this is not the final design, but this is just to that we all understand that we are speaking about the same thing and that this is what you have in mind. Same with the diagram. This is a pretty basic, simple diagram if you guys compare it to the one I just showed you, but it's another visual artifact you can use to collaborate with your client. Okay. I think that's most of what I have today. I have a few more slides, but maybe instead of that, we can go into the Q&A and see if there's any questions at this point.
There are a lot actually. Well, first, thanks for sharing that. Really informative and like really appreciate how you went deep into sharing your process with us. It actually like it feels very practical and come based on the questions that people are asking, it seems like it also resonates with them.
Okay.
So thank you for sharing, Alicia. Let's kick it off with the questions. If you still want to raise your, I think we have time for around 3 questions. So let's start off with the latest one. How do you manage expectations while sharing prototypes so early? Because that's quite
that
quick.
is a really good question. Very straightforwardly, very clearly. Otherwise, you do risk, you do risk misalignment actually. So you have to make it clear, especially now that everybody can prompt their thing and everybody can come to your office and think, well, I can build whatever on an AI building tool. You have to be very clear about what you did, what's still missing, what's the value of that, what the reason you are showing them that, what feedback you want from them. Yeah, I think the why am I showing you this? It's not to say, hey, we are done, this is finished, look at it. It's more like, okay, we've created a prototype based on the information we have so far, with the only intent of aligning if this is the right direction. There are certain functionalities that we think are too broadly defined, and we're gonna need to go into design and into further detailing, and those are the ones you're gonna see that might not be great. So just know that this prototype is just for us to create more value, to define further what are the requirements, etc.
So it's really using the prototypes as a way to align and clear expectations up. Right? Okay.
Yeah, it's again a visual artifact.
Yeah, sense.
A means of collaboration that we are creating. Yeah.
That's great. And from Jason, hopefully that answered it, Sylvia. Then Jason's asking, do you identify sources of volatility or change that will disrupt the product use cases or architecture before going into design?
Yes, so these are like the red flags. And we are talking about red flags through discovery from the very beginning. That's also where we see the value of a very tight core group, the pro triad, that are communicating even about the profile of the client. Like, who is this client? What is their own maybe communication and collaboration red flags, potential issues that we see within the broadness of the definition of the idea. From client profile to technical, very technical stuff, to going all the way through design potential red flags. We are all the time internally keeping track of these, and we try to just bring them back, of course, in a very polite way, but bring them back to the client. Like, we see, this is still not defined, or this idea that you have might be completely not feasible, or this potential integration with that pre-existing system of that very traditional industry might be problematic. It can be very specific, but yeah.
I think that the part on red flags is definitely a topic for another session.
Yeah.
I think it might be more a therapy session for everyone saying the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Last question, if at the end of the 12 weeks the client decides to go straight into another 12-week increment, would you start with discovery again, or would the other sprints you ran have been enough? So what's the process like after the
Yes.
12-week cycle?
Yes, exactly. So that discovery might look a little bit different because we start from that product roadmap. So the first thing we would align around is that product roadmap. So touch base with the client. Is this still, based on what the increment we've done, is this still leading? Therefore, let's go into almost like a discovery session with a product roadmap as the input and talk about that new column. That is, if we build the now, that will be the next column that gets to be built. And we can expect the client would change things, right? And we would need to go into somewhat a different look of the discovery, but not that far off, right? There might be less technical research to run, but it might open up for more discussions, detailed discussions about a functionality that has not been tested. Do we want to build into the discovery any kind of testing now that we have the time, etc. So
From what it sounds like, that's also a way to sort of find, because you're co-creating quite a lot, you're creating also commercial sort of opportunities along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess another budget-related question, how do you get a customer to commit to a budget before they know what they will get? Practical, but very true.
Oh, no, they know. Well, the truth is, I think for us, what works really well is to first only make them commit to the discovery, to be honest. So the discovery is really easy to sell, right? You are selling that you're going to end up with a very clear product roadmap, even a diagram, nowadays, even a prototype of what you want to build for a competitive price, right? Because it's not that long of a time and it's not that many people involved. And then if you're interested, we continue, right? So it depends. I think we are an agency, so that means that sales is a craft. Like it's not a repeatable model. Every client you approach them slightly different, and you build a relationship with them through a sales process. So I think sometimes the whole package comes in directly, and that's great. And sometimes it's the discovery. Many times it's the discovery, but very few times it's only the discovery. So that is where we see this model of engagement is also working for the client, because they get to know us, they understand that we now understand their product, and then it's kind of straightforward. Like, okay, if I can build it, if I have the money and I want to continue with you guys, let's do it.
Yeah, so there's also really that relationship aspect for it.
Yeah.
Total sense. And that rounds up the hour. It felt like it went by really fast.
Yeah, because I talk too much.
No. And I think it's also all the questions that people were asking. So thank you to Alicia for sharing her practical experience around the PDLC and how they've revamped it. And thank you to everyone for being here, for all the thoughtful questions and comments. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you got value out of it. And I'm dropping something in chat. So if you want to say hello to us, please feel free to do so. Follow Alicia on LinkedIn. That's a super LinkedIn creator plug, and the work that she's doing at Miyagami. And if you want to connect more about the different programs we're running for consultancies and agencies, I've also dropped our links there. And there's a bit of good news. We have the 5th iteration of our pilot run next week with our own solutions lead, Jesse. And he'll actually be sharing a lot of information, not just information, inspiration about how you can more effectively run a lot of the consultancy and agency use cases on Miro. So hopefully we'll also see you there next week. And because of all the response we've been getting for Reframe, we actually wanted to run this into a continuous series. So we're going to be restarting back by end of April, and you can expect this to run bi-weekly. And that's because of you and that you have. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day or evenings, wherever you're at, and hope to see you again. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.